I stood in a parking lot in Ludwigshafen last October, watching workers stream out of a BASF chemical plant that had operated continuously since 1865. 158 years, through 2 world wars, through the Great Depression, through the Cold War and reunification, that plant never stopped. Now it's shrinking permanently. 3,000 jobs being relocated to China and Louisiana, not temporarily, forever. An engineer named Klaus, 53 years old, told me he'd worked there for 26 years. His father worked there before him. His grandfather worked there before that. 3 generations at the same plant. My son just graduated with a chemical engineering degree, Klaus said. I told him to look for work in Poland. Not as a joke, as actual advice. A German father telling his German son to build his career in Poland. He laughed when he said it, but there was no humor in his eyes. 600 miles east on the same day, I watched construction crews pour concrete foundations for a massive new factory outside Wrocław. South Korean battery manufacturer SK Innovation. 5,000 jobs coming. Modern equipment. Decades of production planned. The Polish site manager, a woman named Agnieszka, had worked in Germany for 8 years before returning home. I left Poland because there were no opportunities, she told me. Now Germans are asking me for jobs. The world turned upside down in 10 years. These 2 scenes, playing out simultaneously across Europe, tell you everything about the most significant economic shift on this continent since World War II. And almost nobody is paying attention. Germany, the economic engine that powered Europe for 70 years, is breaking down. Poland, the country Western Europeans used to dismiss as a source of cheap labor, is becoming one of the most dynamic economies on Earth. This isn't temporary. This isn't cyclical. This is structural transformation that will reshape everything from trade routes to political power to where your products come from for the rest of your life. And the decisions that made this inevitable were made years ago. We're just watching the consequences unfold now. To understand how Germany fell this far this fast, you need to understand one catastrophic bet that German leaders made and kept doubling down on, even as evidence mounted that it was a disaster. They bet everything on cheap Russian gas. Not just energy policy. Everything. The entire German economic model for the 21st century was built on the assumption that Russia would keep supplying cheap natural gas forever. German manufacturers could produce steel, chemicals, glass, and machinery more cheaply than competitors because their energy costs were lower. German homes could heat affordably through cold winters. German electricity could be generated cheaply while the country slowly transitioned to renewables. It was elegant on paper. It was also staggeringly naive. I spoke with a former German Energy Ministry official who asked not to be named. He told me that internal warnings about Russian dependency were raised repeatedly starting in 2008. The response was always the same, he said. Russia needs our money as much as we need their gas. Mutual dependency creates stability. 14 years of warnings ignored. Exposed in 14 days when Russia invaded Ukraine. Suddenly, natural gas prices didn't rise by 20% or 50%. They rose by 400%. German factories that had operated profitably for decades were losing money on every unit produced. The math simply didn't work anymore. But here's what made a bad situation catastrophic. While this energy crisis was exploding, Germany shut down its last 3 nuclear power plants in April 2023. Let me say that again because it still doesn't seem real. In the middle of the worst energy crisis in German history, with electricity prices at record highs and industrial production collapsing, Germany deliberately eliminated a source of reliable, clean electricity that had been operating safely for decades. I asked the former official why. His answer was blunt. Politics. The anti-nuclear movement in Germany is religious, not rational. Evidence doesn't matter. The Greens had made nuclear shutdown a condition of joining the coalition government. The promise was kept, even though the justification had completely collapsed. The numbers tell the story. German industrial electricity prices are now 3 to 4 times higher than in France, which kept its nuclear plants. They're 4 to 5 times higher than in the United States. They're 6 to 7 times higher than in China. You cannot compete in manufacturing with that cost structure. It's not difficult. It's impossible. What happens when a country's energy costs make manufacturing uncompetitive? The factories leave. Not threats to leave, not considering leaving, actually packing up equipment and moving to other countries. BASF is the example everyone knows because it's the most dramatic. One of the oldest and largest chemical companies in the world, founded in Germany, reducing its German operations permanently. But BASF is just the visible tip of an enormous iceberg. I spent 2 weeks talking to German manufacturers across different industries. The pattern was identical everywhere. A glass manufacturer in Bavaria told me they're moving production to Spain where electricity is 40% cheaper. We make the same product, he said. We hire the same type of workers. The only difference is the electricity bill. That difference is 3 million euros per year. We had no choice. A steel company executive told me they're building new capacity in the United States instead of expanding in Germany. We wanted to stay, she said. We're a German company. Our workers are German, our families are here, but the government made it impossible. Energy costs, regulations, taxes, bureaucracy. At some point you have to be realistic. A machine tool manufacturer is relocating to Poland. The irony is painful, the owner told me. 30 years ago, we hired Polish workers because they were cheap. Now we're moving to Poland because we can't afford to operate in Germany. Polish workers aren't cheap anymore. They're skilled and well paid. We're moving because everything else is better there. Energy, taxes, regulations, speed of getting things done. This exodus isn't being tracked in real time by any official statistics. The full scale won't be visible for years. But talk to people on the ground, and you understand it's happening faster than anyone in Berlin wants to admit. One estimate I heard from an industry association suggests that 15% of German manufacturing capacity will relocate within 5 years. Not shrink, relocate to other countries. Taking jobs, tax revenue, expertise, and supply chain relationships with them. Germany isn't having a recession. Germany is being hollowed out. If there's one industry that symbolizes German economic power, it's automobiles. Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Porsche, Audi, Volkswagen. These names represent a century of engineering excellence. They're not just companies, they're national identity, and they're all in serious trouble. The threat isn't American. Ford and GM are struggling too. The threat is Chinese, and it arrived faster than anyone predicted. 3 years ago, Chinese electric vehicles were a joke in European markets. Cheap, ugly, unreliable. Nobody cross-shopped a BYD against a BMW. Today, BYD sells electric vehicles in Europe for 20,000 euros less than comparable German models. The quality gap has vanished. In some areas, particularly battery technology and software integration, Chinese manufacturers are actually ahead. I test drove a BYD Seal last month. The car was excellent, smooth, quiet, well-built, packed with technology. The navigation system was better than anything I've used in German cars. The price was 35,000 euros. A comparable BMW i4 costs over 55,000 euros. €20,000 more for a car that isn't objectively better. How do you compete with that? A senior engineer at a German automaker, speaking anonymously, told me the internal mood is close to panic. We spent 20 years perfecting internal combustion engines, while China spent 20 years perfecting batteries and electric drivetrains. They made the right bet. We made the wrong one. Now we're trying to catch up, but they have a 10-year head start in the technologies that matter. Volkswagen announced factory closures and layoffs in Germany for the first time in the company's history. Not in Mexico, not in Slovakia, in Germany. The flagship Wolfsburg plant is reducing shifts. Workers who thought they had jobs for life are being offered early retirement packages. The union is fighting back, but they're fighting against mathematics. You cannot build cars in Germany at costs that are competitive with Chinese production. The labor costs are higher. The energy costs are dramatically higher. The regulatory burden is higher. Something has to give. My prediction? Within 5 years, at least one major German automaker will either merge, be acquired, or require government rescue. The industry that defined German manufacturing for a century is facing an existential crisis. Energy and automotive are the crises making headlines. But there's a slower, quieter catastrophe unfolding that might be even more devastating. Germany is running out of Germans. The country has one of the lowest birth rates in the world. For every 100 Germans alive today, only 65 children are being born to replace them. The population is aging rapidly and shrinking steadily. Walk through any German factory, and you'll see it. The workers are old, not middle-aged, old. Gray hair everywhere. The skilled technicians who know how to run complex equipment are 55, 60, 65 years old. They're retiring faster than they can be replaced. A manufacturing executive told me his biggest problem isn't energy costs or Chinese competition. It's finding workers. I have machines sitting idle because I can't find people to operate them. Young Germans don't want factory jobs. They want to work for tech companies or in Berlin, and there aren't enough of them anyway. Germany needs immigration to survive economically. This is mathematical reality, not political opinion. The workforce is shrinking by 300,000 people per year. Without massive immigration, entire industries will collapse from lack of workers. But Germany's immigration system is a bureaucratic nightmare that simultaneously fails to attract the skilled workers they desperately need and struggles to manage the asylum seekers who arrive regardless. A software engineer from India told me he waited 18 months for a work visa to Germany. 18 months, he said. By the time my German visa was processed, I had accepted a job in Amsterdam. The Netherlands processed my application in 6 weeks. Germany is not competing for talent. They're driving talent away. Meanwhile, a Ukrainian refugee I spoke with has been in Germany for 2 years and still cannot legally work in her profession, which is nursing. Germany has a massive nursing shortage. She has nursing qualifications. The paperwork to recognize her credentials is still being processed. She works as a cleaner while hospitals advertise desperately for nurses. This is not a system designed to succeed. This is a system designed to fail, and it's failing exactly as designed. Young Germans see all of this. They see declining industries, expensive housing, high taxes, and bureaucratic suffocation. Many are leaving. I met a 28-year-old German engineer in Warsaw who left Munich for a job with a Polish tech company. The salary is slightly lower, he said. But housing is half the price, taxes are lower, and the company is growing. In Munich, I was maintaining old systems. In Warsaw, I'm building new things. The energy here is completely different. When young Germans are moving to Poland for opportunity, something fundamental has changed. Now let me take you 600 miles east, where the opposite story is unfolding. Poland did almost everything right, while Germany did almost everything wrong. And the results are becoming impossible to ignore. Start with energy, since that's where Germany's problems began. While German leaders were signing long-term gas contracts with Russia and shutting down nuclear plants, Polish leaders were doing the exact opposite. They built LNG terminals to import gas from America and Qatar. They invested in renewable energy while maintaining realistic timelines. They signed agreements for 6 new nuclear reactors with American and South Korean technology. Polish leaders didn't trust Russia. This wasn't economic analysis. It was a historical memory. Poland has been invaded, occupied, and betrayed by Russia too many times to believe in Russian reliability. That skepticism, dismissed as paranoid by smug Western Europeans, turned out to be strategic wisdom. When Russian gas stopped flowing, Germany panicked. Poland shrugged. They had alternatives ready. An energy analyst in Warsaw told me, "We spent 15 years preparing for exactly what happened in 2022, not because we knew there would be a war, but because we knew Russia could not be trusted." Germany thought economic interdependence created security. We knew it created vulnerability. The nuclear decision is particularly telling. Germany shut down working reactors. Poland is building new ones. The first reactors won't come online until the early 2030s, but the announcement alone has attracted billions in foreign investment from companies that want to locate near reliable, clean power. Manufacturing is flooding into Poland at a pace that's transforming the country. I visited an industrial park outside Wrocław that didn't exist 5 years ago. Today it contains factories for automotive suppliers, electronics manufacturers, and logistics companies. Thousands of workers. Modern equipment. Production feeding customers across Europe. The site manager, a Polish woman who previously worked in Germany, told me applications from relocating German companies have tripled in the past 2 years. "They call us every week," she said. German companies, Austrian companies, Italian companies. Everyone wants to know about available sites, labor costs, energy prices, regulations. 5 years ago, we had to convince companies to consider Poland. Now they're convincing us to accept them. Labor costs in Poland are still lower than Germany, but that's not the main attraction anymore. Polish workers are well-educated, highly skilled, and extremely productive. They speak multiple languages. They show up on time and work hard. Several executives told me Polish workers outperform German workers on efficiency metrics despite lower wages. The regulatory environment is streamlined in ways Germany can't match. A factory that would take 3 years to permit in Germany can be operating in Poland within 12 months. Time is money, one executive told me. In Germany, time is bureaucracy. In Poland, time is actually money. What's emerging in Poland isn't just economic growth. It's a fundamental shift in European power dynamics. For 70 years, Germany was the undisputed economic leader of Europe. French presidents came and went. Italian governments collapsed monthly. Germany was the steady anchor, the reliable engine, the serious country that got things done. That era is ending. Poland's economy grew while Germany's contracted last year. Poland's industrial production is rising while Germany's is falling. Poland's trade balance is improving while Germany's is deteriorating. More importantly, Poland is spending on defense while Germany dithers. Poland spends over 3% of GDP on defense, far exceeding the NATO target of 2% that Germany still struggles to reach. Poland is buying American tanks, Korean artillery, and building one of the largest armies in Europe. "We live next to Russia," a Polish defense official told me. "We don't have the luxury of pretending threats don't exist. Germany can philosophize about peace, We have to prepare for war. This matters because European leadership isn't just about economics. It's about security, credibility. As threats from Russia persist, countries that take defense seriously gain influence. Countries that don't become dependent on those that do. Poland is also challenging German leadership within the European Union. For decades, EU policy was essentially negotiated between Berlin and Paris, with everyone else accepting the result. Poland is building alternative coalitions with other Central and Eastern European countries that have different priorities. An EU diplomat told me, "The old model of German-French dominance is breaking down. Poland represents a different vision of Europe. More skeptical of Russia, more aligned with America, more focused on sovereignty and practical results. As their economic weight grows, their political influence grows too. The implications extend beyond Europe. Poland is becoming a preferred destination for American, Korean, and Japanese investment. Companies that want European operations but don't trust the German model are choosing Poland. Samsung has major operations in Poland. LG has manufacturing there. Intel is considering a semiconductor facility. These decisions were unthinkable 20 years ago. Now they're obvious. What makes this shift so remarkable is how completely it reverses historical patterns. For centuries, the relationship between Germany and Poland was defined by German power and Polish weakness. German invasion, German occupation, German economic dominance. Poles working in German factories as cheap labor, Polish talent fleeing to Germany for opportunity. Every assumption embedded in that history is reversing. I met a Polish entrepreneur in Krakow who built a software company now worth over 100 million euros. He employs 300 people, including 40 Germans who relocated to Poland for the job opportunities. My grandfather worked in a German factory as a forced laborer during the war, he told me. My father worked in a German factory as a migrant worker in the 1980s. I employed Germans in my Polish company. 3 generations, completely reversed. He wasn't gloating. If anything, he seemed slightly disbelieving. I never imagined this would happen in my lifetime. Poland was always supposed to be behind. Now we're ahead in many areas. It's strange to experience. This reversal isn't just economic. It's psychological and cultural. Young Poles have confidence their parents never had. They've grown up in a rising country. They expect things to get better. They start businesses, take risks, and assume success is possible. Young Germans increasingly have the opposite psychology. They've watched their country's position deteriorate. They worry about the future. Many are pessimistic in ways that become self-fulfilling. A German university professor told me, applications from German students to Polish universities have increased dramatically. Not for Polish language or culture programs, for engineering and business programs. Germans studying in Poland because they see more opportunity there. If you told me this would happen 10 years ago, I would have laughed, he said. Now I just feel sad. Something has gone very wrong. I've spent a lot of time explaining Poland's advantages, but let me be honest about the challenges they still face. This isn't a simple story of inevitable triumph. Poland's total economy is still much smaller than Germany's. Higher growth rates matter, but starting from a smaller base means catching up takes time. Poland won't surpass Germany in absolute economic size anytime soon. Wages are rising rapidly in Poland, which is good for workers but challenging for competitiveness. The cost advantage that attracted initial investment is shrinking. Poland needs to move up the value chain to more sophisticated production before they lose the advantages that got them this far. Innovation is improving, but still behind. Poland has successful companies like CD Projekt, the gaming studio behind the Witcher series, but they don't yet have the density of research institutions, venture capital, and entrepreneurial ecosystems that produce consistent innovation. This takes decades to build. Demographics are a concern in Poland too, though less severe than in Germany. Birth rates are below replacement level. Many young Poles emigrated during earlier hard times, and while return migration is increasing, the brain drain left marks. Political instability creates uncertainty. Poland has had significant conflicts between different governing parties and with EU institutions over rule of law issues. Foreign investors get nervous when politics become unpredictable. Energy transition remains incomplete. Poland still relies heavily on coal for electricity. This creates pollution problems and potential EU regulatory conflicts. The nuclear plants won't arrive for another decade. Managing this transition while maintaining competitiveness is a genuine challenge. And there's always the Russia factor. Poland's geographic location next to an aggressive neighbor creates risks that German investors don't face. A wider European conflict would affect Poland more directly than countries further west. These challenges are real. Poland's success is not guaranteed, but they're building from a foundation of momentum, confidence, and strategic clarity that Germany currently lacks. Can Germany recover? Yes, but not without fundamental changes that current leadership seems unwilling to make. First, energy policy needs complete reconstruction, not gradual adjustment. Complete reconstruction. Germany needs to reconsider nuclear power, massively accelerate renewable deployment with actual storage solutions, and stop pretending that good intentions substitute for reliable electricity. Second, the regulatory burden crushing German industry needs dramatic reduction. Not commissions to study the problem. Actual elimination of requirements that add costs without adding value. German bureaucracy has become a competitive disadvantage that drives investment away. Third, immigration policy needs to prioritize economic benefit while remaining humane. Germany should be competing aggressively for the world's best talent, with fast-track visas and welcoming policies for skilled workers. Instead, they're driving away engineers while struggling to integrate refugees. Fourth, the political culture needs to accept uncomfortable realities. Germany's position in the world has changed. They cannot assume leadership or respect based on history. They have to earn it through performance. This requires honesty that has been notably absent from German political discourse. Fifth, business and government need to work together rather than treating each other as adversaries. In Poland, the government sees business growth as a national priority and acts accordingly. In Germany, government often seems to view business as a problem to be regulated rather than a partner to be supported. A German industrialist told me, "Everything we need to do is obvious. Everyone knows what the problems are, but there's no political will to act. Coalition governments fight each other. Interest groups block change. The bureaucracy resists reform. We're watching ourselves decline in slow motion and somehow unable to stop it. This paralysis is the real German crisis. Not energy or automobiles or demographics individually. The inability to respond effectively to any of them. A country that once represented efficiency and seriousness now represents gridlock and decline. You might be watching this from America or Asia or somewhere else, wondering why German-Polish economic dynamics matter to your life. They matter more than you think. If you buy products, supply chains are shifting. Components and goods that were made in Germany are increasingly being made in Poland or other countries. This affects quality, price, and availability of everything from cars to appliances to industrial equipment. If you invest money, European markets are transforming. German stocks have underperformed for years and may continue struggling. Polish markets have significant growth potential, but also higher risk. Understanding these dynamics helps you make better decisions. If you have a job, global competition affects you. Companies in your country compete with European companies. If those competitors are relocating to lower-cost countries, it changes the competitive landscape everywhere. If your company does business with German or Polish firms, their trajectories affect yours. If you care about politics, European power shifts matter globally. A weaker Germany and stronger Poland means a different European Union, different NATO dynamics, and different relationships with China and Russia. These have ripple effects on international relations everywhere. If you have children thinking about careers, the best opportunities aren't always where you expect. 20 years ago, ambitious young Europeans moved to Germany. Today, many are moving to Poland. Understanding where opportunity is heading helps with long-term decisions. And if you're simply curious about how the world works, this is a case study in how quickly fortunes can reverse. Countries that seem invincible can decline faster than anyone expects. Countries that seem peripheral can rise just as quickly. Nothing is permanent. Let me tell you what I'm watching over the next 5 years to see how this plays out. First, German industrial production statistics. If they keep declining, the hollowing out is accelerating. If they stabilize, maybe the worst is contained. But I don't expect recovery. Second, foreign direct investment flows. Money is already flowing from Germany to Poland and other countries. If this accelerates, it confirms the trend. If it slows, maybe Germany is more competitive than current data suggests. Third, German automotive sector restructuring. At least one major automaker will face a crisis requiring significant intervention. How Germany handles this will reveal whether they can adapt or will continue declining. Fourth, Polish inflation and wage growth. If Poland can maintain competitiveness as wages rise, they're successfully moving up the value chain. If cost advantages disappear without productivity gains replacing them, their model has limits. Fifth, EU political dynamics. Poland's relationship with EU institutions has been contentious. If they find accommodation that maintains EU benefits while preserving national priorities, their rise continues. If conflict escalates, it creates uncertainty that could slow growth. I'll be tracking all of these and updating this analysis as new data emerges. If you want to follow along, subscribe, and I'll keep you informed as this story develops. I started this video in a parking lot in Ludwigshafen, watching Klaus, the third-generation BASF worker, tell his son to look for work in Poland. I want to end by telling you what Klaus said when I asked if he was angry. Angry at who? He said. The politicians who made stupid decisions? Yes, a little. The Russians who stopped sending gas? Not really. They're just Russians being Russians. Myself for not seeing this coming? Maybe. He paused and looked at the factory where his grandfather, his father, and he had worked for a combined 90 years. Mostly I'm just sad. This was supposed to be forever. My grandfather survived the war so he could work here. My father survived the division of Germany so he could work here. I thought I would retire here and my son would take my place. Instead, I'm telling him to leave. Go to Poland. Go to America. Go anywhere that still makes things. Because Germany doesn't anymore. Not like it used to. He was quiet for a moment. The machines are still here, he said. The buildings are still here. The knowledge is still here, in our heads. But something is gone. The belief that tomorrow would be better than today. Germans don't believe that anymore. The Poles do. Maybe that's the real difference. Maybe it is. The machines and buildings can be rebuilt. The knowledge can be transferred. But confidence, momentum, the belief that you're building something rather than watching something decay, those are harder to restore once lost. Germany lost them. Poland has them. And that, more than any economic statistic, is why the power balance in Europe is shifting. I want to hear what you think. If you're German, is this analysis accurate to your experience? Or am I missing something important? If you're Polish, does this match what you're seeing on the ground? What would you add or correct? If you're from somewhere else, does your country face similar dynamics? Are you watching a comparable shift in your region? Drop a comment with your perspective. I read them all. The best insights often come from people living these changes rather than just analyzing them from outside. And if you found this valuable, subscribe. This story is developing in real time. The decisions being made right now in Berlin and Warsaw will shape European economics for the next 50 years. I'll keep tracking it and sharing what I learn. The era of German dominance in Europe is ending. Something new is emerging. Understanding it gives you an advantage in navigating what comes next. Thanks for watching.